My name is Tim Quigley, Captain Stephen Timothy Quigley, Jr., United States Navy retired, second-generation Navy. My story is the story of my two Vietnamese experiences, one during the conflict and the other in the aftermath of the collapse of the South Vietnamese government. I'm an Irish American born in Wabasha, Minnesota, a small Mississippi River town, later made famous in the movie Grumpy Old Men. My mom was a tomboy, class valedictorian, a chemist and poet who raised 6 children. Dad was first a naval officer and meteorologist during World War II in Korea, and then a chemist. I served in the United States Navy from 1963 until 1994. A Naval Academy graduate, I qualified as a naval aviator and joined my first operational squadron in December 1969. I was deployed to the Western Pacific for what would be 3 back-to-back Vietnam conflict deployments. I flew the 4-engine turboprop P-3 Orion Lockheed Electra aircraft, which was primarily an anti-submarine warfare platform and used for surveillance missions in the South China Sea during the Vietnam conflict. Initially assigned to Patrol Squadron 1, I was deployed to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, Japan within 6 weeks of joining the squadron. While we flew operational missions in our Japanese operating area, our real purpose was to set up crew rotations into the Vietnam conflict theater. Our task there was to patrol the South Vietnamese coast on a daily basis, to survey all sea traffic, identify and interrupt any North Vietnamese infiltrating trawlers. My first Vietnam deployment rotation occurred the last week of April 1970. My flight crew landed in Cam Ranh Bay around sunset, and we were immediately brought into the briefing room for our 1-hour in-theater indoctrination. About halfway through the indoctrination session, there was a horrific explosion. The entire building shook, vibrated, and groaned. I had been in earthquakes, but this was nothing like I'd ever felt before. Sirens began screeching, and all of a sudden we were being herded out of the building and directed into the confusion and darkness towards a bunker. We spent the next 13 hours in the bunker, experiencing round after round of rocket attacks with explosions often in close proximity. Throughout the darkness of the night, I remember constant motion as our security unit detail personnel defended the base, not only from rockets, but from suicide bombers called sappers. The shock waves were constant as the rockets found their mark on our fuel farm tanks, continuously knocking us off our feet. The attack itself was initiated when a U.S. Army ambulance came careening up to the main gate, with lights flashing and warning horns ablare. The guard towers sighted the ambulance as it came into view and directed the gates be open. Once inside the gates, the ambulance came to an abrupt halt, the back door opened from inside, and out jumped 12 North Vietnamese sappers, throwing explosive satchels in all directions. The first satchel was slung into the guard tower, and both the servicemen on duty were blown to smithereens with body parts flying all over the place. It took the entire night to fight off the rocket attacks from the hills and find and eliminate the sappers in our midst. One was killed while targeting our bunker. We all grew up that night. We were in war, and it was deadly. The silence in the morning throughout the base was deafening, and the sight at the main gate was gruesome. 12 sappers were killed, and 8 servicemen died. Now it was personal and real. Crew esprit and closeness got us through. My lifelong bond is with the men of the 3 flight crews which I served on in 1970, 1971, and 1972. I started as a navigator, moved up to co-pilot, and ended a seasoned combat aircraft and mission commander, accumulating about 8,000 flight hours and earning an air medal for 250 hours of direct combat mission flying. I left Vietnam for the last time on my birthday in September 1972, 5 months before the end of U.S. operations. It was a tough and maturing 3 years. I love the Vietnamese people dearly, from the hooch mamas who cleaned our bunk rooms to our chefs and guides and to the children. Such a beautiful and genteel people in the midst of an awful national experience. For us in uniform at the time, the end of the conflict seemed incomplete, because as we Americans always want to, we hadn't fixed it or left the situation better, we had just left. That is not the American way. Watching the collapse and capitulation of South Vietnam the last week of April 1975 stuck painfully in my gut. My own personal sense of duty wanted to help, and I was to get my chance. In early 1979, the great Vietnamese refugee exodus by sea started in earnest. Thousands of refugees were setting out onto the South China Sea in the most overloaded and often unseaworthy dhows and crafts of all sizes and shapes. To prevent a potential catastrophe, the U.S. initiated refugee operations. I was on deployment at Naha, Okinawa, Japan when my flight crew was first ordered to start conducting refugee missions. For the next 2.5 years, we flew countless missions on our annual deployments, searching and assisting in the rescue of these brave people. One mission in particular sticks in my memory. It was August 19, 1979, and we were 9 hours into the flight when the radar operator yelled dive, and we did. We found a boat sinking with 42 people on board. We located a nearby German sailing vessel and vectored it to rendezvous with the refugee boat. The first refugee handed over onto the sailing boat was an infant. That infant, rescued that day on the high seas, graduated from the University of California, Berkeley 2 decades later with my 3 sons, one of which was born 3 months after the rescue. You see, these missions were that which gives meaning to life, the most memorable ones of my 31 years of service to the nation in the Navy. I'm grateful I had 2 semesters of experience in the Vietnam Theater of Operations. I was sitting at a picnic table a number of years ago and started chatting with a young man named Ted Truong. When I asked him how did he come to settle in San Jose, he said simply, "I came by boat with half a banana." Just like Ted, I cannot tell you how many times in the years since I have met someone and then realized that maybe, just maybe, he or she may have been on a boat that we rescued. It still brings tears to my eyes. We made a difference in spite of all that horror and destruction. We made a difference for some very special people.